Good evening, good evening, good evening, and welcome to Couch Conversations with the Doctors, where health is wealth. Remember, this program is for informational purposes only, but of course, it's great information that we are sharing with you with our esteemed panel of physicians that are here. I want to say thank you and welcome to all of our social media families. And we're going to quickly go around the table and do our introductions. I see my co-worker, Dr. Douglas Graham, is here. Dr. Doug, why don't you introduce yourself to everyone that's here?
Good evening, everyone. I'm a retired physician. I've been working in the Congressman's office for over a year. It's really a pleasure and honor to be here, and I'm going to try and answer your questions best I can.
All right. To the man who says that I threaten him all the time to be here, but he's an adamant gardener that does a great job. That's our very own Dr. James Miller. Dr. Miller?
Good evening, everybody. We're so pleased to be um, here this evening, and hopefully, we're going to continue to engage in some important conversation for you, and hopefully, we can give you some information that's going to make you healthier and hopefully make your life even longer.
All right. All right. Gotta keep us healthy. I know we have some feedback for some odd reason for a second. I don't know. We had a few technical difficulties, so I know that'll work its way out to that weight loss guru, the man who is the family physician to the stars, I want to call him. That's our very own Dr. Tony Hampton. Dr. Hampton.
Uh, Hello, everybody. Welcome to Monday. And again, very privileged to be with my esteemed panelists and always excited to share words of wisdom as it relates to healing. Had a great day at clinic today, had probably 6 or 7 success stories where people made lifestyle changes and they were able to reduce medicines, reduce their weight, improve their diabetes, hemoglobin A1C. So it was really a pleasure to see that, and you feel like you're living your purpose when you can actually inspire people to heal. And it really requires their own work, and we're just kind of leading them a little bit, and it's just good to see. So thank you for allowing me to be here.
Simply fantastic. Want to say hey to Mary Ballinger that's here, to Linda Johnson, to Miss Martha who has checked in, who's saying good evening to everyone. And I believe the congressman is probably running into his seat. Oh, now see Nellie is here saying good evening, and Angela Underwood is here, and she says good evening just as well. Before we get to those questions, I'm wavering to see how quick the congressman is going to get to his seat. Okay, so we'll just start, and once he gets here, we'll have him do his introduction. I guess we'll just lead right into those questions we have. So, our first question for this evening, oh, wait a minute, wait. In the background, is it a bird? Is it a plane? It's the Avenger chair. It's
Hey,
Dr. Maya. Hey, Dr.
hi.
Maya, why don't you introduce yourself to everyone that's here?
Hello, my name is Dr. Maya Green. I'm so excited to be here. Thankful to you, Nikki, for even organizing this. Thankful to Congressman Danny Davis and my esteemed colleagues on the panel. Always good to learn from community and each other. Thanks for having me.
Wonderful. I see Marianne Jackson has chimed in with us. All right, Marianne Jackson. She's saying good evening to everyone. So I guess we'll just start with our first question of the day while we're waiting on the congressman to come in. And if I chop this up, just help me out, guys. What is lymphedema? Am I correct? Okay. So what is lymphedema, and is it the same as Graves' disease? If not, what's the difference?
So, lymphedema is interference with your body's natural circulation. You've got a system that returns water back to the heart. But in this particular set of circumstances, that system breaks down and the fluid begins to collect in an arm or in a leg. Graves' disease is actually an autoimmune disease where the body is acting against itself and it's affecting the muscles that surround the eyes and other portions of the thyroid. Because strangely enough, the muscles of the eyes contain structures that look a lot like the thyroid too. So one is kind of more of an aging or anatomic problem. The other is what we call an autoimmune problem.
Mhm.
And it's not uncommon to see lymphedema after you've had like breast cancer surgery, where they take out the lymph nodes from your arms, or you've had like a serious accident or injury involving a leg. So it's not uncommon.
Okay. Tony, you look like you got something to say.
I guess what I would say is there is another condition that people really get confused with lymphedema, and that's lymphedema. And lymphedema, unlike lymphedema, which deals with the lymph nodes, lymphedema is when you have fat accumulation. And what happens is the fat accumulation, you won't see it in your hands and you won't see it in your feet. So that's one of the, so when I did my obesity training, that's how we distinguish. You'll see the leg will be swollen all the way down to the foot. And then when you get to the foot's the normal size. So it's almost like a sudden stop. So that's when you can distinguish the two. Lymphedema, and that's Lipedema, that has to be treated surgically, where they have to literally suck some of that fat out in order to treat it. So you don't see it all the time, but it is definitely something that distinguishes it from lymphedema, where you have to treat that with wraps and things like that. So it's a little different. So I just wanted to distinguish those two.
Okay. All right, fantastic. Maya, are you looking? I should not be reading you guys' faces the way that I do. Maya, were you thinking about something? Are you okay? Go right ahead.
I was debating whether I would add. There are different stages. So to me, lymphedema. Dr. Graham, I was trying to formulate my thought though. Let's formulate it together. Dr. Graham mentioned our lymphatic system, the system that kind of returns all the water, or not all the water, but water in our body to the heart. If you think about it, if I pour a glass of water, it goes to the bottom of the glass. It doesn't just, stick on the sides and, at room temperatures, just go towards air or things like that. Water, and if you look at waterfalls, water will flow towards the lowest level of ground, right? And so gravity has an effect on water. The lymph node is a thing that pumps. The lymphatic system, is a thing that pumps the water back to the heart so that doesn't happen. Any kind of destruction, surgery, because if you think about it, when you have surgery, they cut into parts, and sometimes that and the lymphatic system won't kind of repair itself. It's not one of the things they usually sew back together. When you think of infection can cause it, because infection causes inflammation, and that inflammation, as the body tries to clear it, can destroy our lymphatic system. And so if the water channels aren't connected so they can flow back, then the water will pool, or what our bodies call stir space, or seek a lowest level of rest for itself. And then there are, and correct me if I'm wrong, there is lymphedema that you can get congenitally, meaning you can be born with a predisposition to do it. And then there's lymphedema precox, which is usually women around puberty time and young 20s. You'll start to see that, right? And then there's the one you get late onset in addition. So the causes: infection, surgery, or some kind of crushing or destruction of that. And then there's the one you're born with, the one you get in puberty, and then the one you get late onset. So that's how I usually break it up when we talk about lymphedema. Dr. Miller, I see you looking like, yes,
Right.
grasshopper, that was good.
Everybody had this face, like,
those were all excellent explanation of lymphedema. I tend to, when I like to think of it, I always like to think of it as an obstruction, something that's causing a blockage of the return, or the blockage of the flow from the lymphatic system of the fluid back to the heart. And that blockage is what causes swelling, is because the fluid accumulates in an arm or leg because it can't flow back because of the impedance. And so that's sort of how I think of lymphedema. So it's mostly it's a mechanical kind of a issue.
All right, so Yolanda Williams is here and she says good evening to everyone. Linda Johnson has a question, and so does Mary Ballinger. And I see your questions. We're going to grab those in just a second. But the congressman has made his way to his chair, so we're going to let him do his opening and his introductions, and we'll go right back to your questions. Congressman?
Well, I tell you, I had such a great weekend until I don't hardly know where to start. The Bud Billiken parade was actually off the chart. And considering the fact that we missed the last year and couldn't do it, but to see the large number of children who were out performing, getting ready to go back to school, being inspired, motivated. I happened to be right behind the group that was displayed in Sunday's Sun Times. And I guess whoever took the photograph saw the same thing in them that I saw in them. And I guess that's why they used them as part of the story that they wrote, because they were just incredible. And whoever the adults are and were who had been working with them, my hat goes off to them, because children cannot really do what they have the potential of doing unless there are adults willing to work with them, willing to give them the guidance, direction. Let me tell you, if today would be my mother's birthday, if she was still alive, August the 16th. But yesterday I celebrated with people for Miss Atchison, who, had she lived, would have been 110 today. She died in March. And of course, we went to her birthday party in 2019 when she was 108. Now, she's not the only person, because Miss Susie Lewis is 110. I think her birthday, or will be. And we were fortunate to go to both their birthday parties when they were 108. Miss Lewis is still in good shape and was actually walking around. And every time I would come in contact with either one, I'd always be tempted to ask them, how did they manage to live as long as they did? And the answer was, the good Lord did it. And so I guess no matter what else it is that we may add to it, of what we might do to help him, the good Lord still is in control. And so I had a wonderful, incredible weekend, because I went all the way up north, almost to Evanston, to the Indian parade that was held on yesterday. And my multi-ethnic advisory group had a float in there. And of course, many of the people in that group happened to be physicians and people in healthcare. As a matter of fact, I ran into the PRISM group because they were there giving vaccinations, and had an opportunity to say thank you to them for all the vaccinations that we've collaborated with them on. So the weekend was great. Monday couldn't be any better. I'm looking forward to Saturday, because that's when we're going to have our 40th annual back to school picnic and parade. And obviously, we've got plenty of book bags and school supplies and pens and pencils and hot dogs and vaccine and, and volunteer health screenings and all of those things that you need and all of those things that you need to do. So I'm looking forward to a great week. Thank you all so much. And I want to hear some more of these questions about things I don't know anything about, like what y'all was just talking about a minute ago. I didn't have the slightest idea what that was. So right on.
All right. So Edna Weatherspoon says Edna is watching with y'all. So thank you, Edna, for being here with us. I see Dr. Tony Hampton has put some great information in the chat in reference to that question about lymphedema, in reference to those who may be having surgery for breast cancer and how to avoid that, with a great link there for you to follow up at your, for your reading pleasures. You can probably download that link and print it. Hopefully that'll help the person that had that question about lymphedema. So I thank you so much. Mary Ballinger says the vaccine protects us that have been fully dosed. But other than the mask and social distancing, how else is the spread to be controlled? Vaccinated. But you guys go right ahead. Answer that question for us.
What was the last
Maya,
part of it?
how else how else is the spreading to be controlled? So how else can we control the spread of COVID?
Besides vaccination? That was the question,
Yeah.
Nikki. I'm sorry, my
Exactly.
my internet.
Yeah.
Okay.
So she
Well,
said
I'll start, and then any of the other doctors can kind of help me with it. So first thing I want to say is vaccines are protective to a uh, the ones we have out now are protective to varying degrees and varying percentage, right? With that said, uh, you are 25 times less likely to end up in the hospital or having a negative outcome like death, things like that, or even, if you are vaccinated, right? So 99 point, I think now today it's 97% of people who are having negative outcomes because of this Delta variant are people who were not vaccinated. That means 0.03% of people got the vaccine. So the vaccine is proving to be enormously impactful in helping our bodies fight off COVID. Right. So with that being said, the other things we still want to do is we in certain situations where there's a lot of people, we want to be in compliance with our local mandates because the city of Chicago follows the Centers for Disease Control guidelines. If there's a certain amount of COVID around us, we still have to wear a mask. We still have to wash our hands, and then we're requesting that we still social distance. Right. Why? Because I am fully vaccinated. That does not mean that I can't spread COVID to other people. So if I'm without a mask, that doesn't mean I can get it and then spread it to my 7-year-old nephew. You know, if I'm not washing my hands, that doesn't mean I can't put it on different surfaces, things like that. And then I maintain my physical distance because I want to ensure that someone else who may have COVID it's not going to impact me, or I'm not going to get it. And when I get it, remember, I'm 25 times less likely to end up in the hospital or worse because I'm vaccinated. And so those are the things we still have to do. Now, throughout this pandemic, I imagine those guidelines are going to change. That's why it's so important to keep up with the latest guidelines I live in Chicago. Some of you out there may not. Whatever's local to you, look at the public health department's website, or if you check the news, they'll tell you it's time to wear a mask. It's time to stay in. It's time to have gatherings no larger than this number of people, because we have to do it together. All right. So those are the things: hand washing, physical distancing. We don't have a shelter in place recommendation right now. If one comes, then it's that. and wearing the mask. I don't know if I forgot any one, but any of the other doctors can help me out.
Yeah, the only other thing I'll add to that is again awareness, and awareness means being aware of what's going on in other states and other localities, so that if you, for one reason or another, are going to travel to those particular areas, that you become even more cautious in terms of protecting yourself and from because of if you go to an area where there's a high incidence of COVID and a low incidence of vaccination, there's more, you have an increase of a possibility of getting infected and being able and then maybe infecting someone else. So that awareness is a very important awareness where you're going and what the situation is in the area that you're going to visit.
And there will be a there's going to be a third dose. They're already suggesting that for immunocompromised folk. What does that mean? It's not just HIV. If you're taking immunosuppressive drugs, you have rheumatoid, one of Dr. Graham's, things. You can. You're going to be probably offered that even as of right now. I know in our health system we started offering that this week. So I just think that when the third dose is available for a booster, I would take advantage of that. I will be traveling this weekend to take my kids to their school. And I know that when I hit the middle part of Illinois, that there will be people they're not going to be masking. It's a different culture. So when you travel to other places, like in Mississippi, the numbers are really high right now. There may be people in those states who don't believe in this. So you have to, stay true to who you are and don't get caught up in the misperceptions that they have got caught up in. So the other thing I wanted to mention, going back to that, what I linked is extremely important. I didn't know anything about, it's going back to a lymphedema. I did not know anything about the bioimpedance spectroscopy. What the heck is that? Well, that's a way for us to determine, are you getting lymphedema? Are you getting it, right? I promise you, I've been practicing for 28 years. I interviewed Dr. Cherie Prentice, and she used to, kind of be a lead person for one of the organizations that deal with breast cancer. And she walks around with a sleeve on her arm for the rest of her life. And if she had only gotten this test, this bioimpedance spectroscopy, and then it suggested that her lymph node dissection was going to lead to lymphedema. If she then wore her sleeve before it even happened for about 3 months or so, it would have never progressed. Oh my God. So you go from like not having to wear a sleeve for the rest of your life and the pain and other stuff that comes with it. And imagine how that impacts your personal life. I mean, you're trying to deal with a sleeve and you got a husband and all these other issues that we don't talk about on TV, right? And yet a simple test. And that's why these types of forms are important. So you take that article, bring it to your family member, to the clinician who may not be aware. And if he's not aware, you say, could you investigate this? Because time is of the essence. I'm about to have this procedure. I don't want to have lymphedema. I hear it's a common problem after breast surgery. And we need to get the word out that that type of procedure is available and affordable.
Okay. Well, really quickly on Instagram, there's a question that came in that's asking if you would repeat the beginning of your conversation when you talked about this booster dose that's there, what immunocompromised means, and they're also asking, should people who are unvaccinated or not fully dosed still wear a mask inside when they're in the company of others? So if you can, I hope I didn't throw too much at you at one time, but I'll go back over it. So go right ahead.
Yeah. So I think again, when you have an issue with this third dose, let me just say this. The third dose is going to be available for all of us. It's just a matter of, they just escalate things. So we start with the most vulnerable. So we're going to start with anybody who's deemed immunocompromised, that's a definition. They're going to allow a clinician to define a little bit. But so again, we think HIV type stuff and we think immunocompromised. But if you're being treated with drugs that will compromise your immune system, or you have some autoimmune condition that has compromised your immune system, your clinician will then have to use their discretion to say, is this person immunocompromised? So, but you do have to get that approved. You can't just, if you call because you have hypertension, they probably won't consider that a condition that is immunocompromised at the level they're thinking. All chronic medical conditions could potentially make you immunocompromised. Diabetes clearly affects your immune system, but I don't think they're at that place yet. More than likely, they're going to go from that to, let's do the high-risk people, nursing homes, prisons, seniors, just like they did with the initial, and then they're going to get to everybody else. But I anticipate this escalation will occur very rapidly. Some of the delay is based on, the delays in research and things like that. So, and the second, you said, what was the second half of your question?
They asked about people who are not vaccinated or who are not fully vaccinated. Should they be wearing a mask when they're inside?
Well, let me just say,
Oh,
my
yeah,
colleagues,
but go ahead. I'm gonna let you answer.
Lord have mercy. Let me tell you something. They think I'm crazy. I walk around here masked up, and I do it. I just went to CVS before this. I was masked up. Some people were, some people weren't. I don't have time to get sick. I don't have the patience for it. If I can avoid a cold, I don't want it. So for me, when I put a mask on, it's the equivalent of just putting my clothes on at this point.
Yeah.
I just don't see why anybody would take a risk when it's so easy just to put a mask on. So if you're unvaccinated, and this is a vaccinated person who's saying this, so I just think that people who are unvaccinated should absolutely mask up if they're around people. If they're in their homes with their families and those are the people they live with, that's probably okay. But when you start getting people coming to the house, Junebug from down the street talking about he want to come borrow some sugar or something, you need to, either put it through the door. But we need to be safe, guys. The numbers are continuing to go up. I couldn't believe some of the numbers. I mean, Mississippi has way less people than we have in our state, and their numbers are off the chain. There are some states, Florida, numbers are off the chain. So I don't see that. We're still in a pandemic, and I'm not very comfortable putting myself in harm's way. And when my kids go to college, I'm going to be very particular about what they do, and I'm going to try to. They're young, so they don't always, they don't have the level of caution we have because we've been on the planet longer. But I'm going to encourage them to continue to make good decisions, because how are you going to be a good student if you're sick? So,
and then I just want to, Grant, I just want to dovetail off of what Dr. Hampton is saying. You all know me, I'm an HIV specialist. And so one of the first things I did was I was like, oh, let me see, because remember, the recommendation is for our community members who are immunocompromised. Now, HIV stands for human immunodeficiency virus. It's a virus that wants to attack your immune system, the immune system of humans, right? So if the virus is controlled through taking daily medicine, and your immune system numbers, so typical immune system numbers are going to be around, like they say 600 to 1200, right? If you can go talk to your doctor, it tells us how many soldiers we have in the army of our immune system to fight off disease, right? When you are considered immunocompromised, if I'm living with HIV and I'm considered immunocompromised, that means instead of 600 to 1200 soldiers, meaning my T cells, my CD4, we call them CD4s or T cells. Those are the soldiers, number of soldiers we have. Again, typically you're going to have 600 to 1200 or more, right? Once that number, y'all remember the movie The 300? And essentially there was a Spartan army, and below less than 300, like 300 went to fight for their country. but it wasn't enough. But anything, oh, once they got over 300, they were able to, be successful. Well, HIV is a story of 200. Okay. If we have 200 or less soldiers, if that CD4 or T cell comes back 200 or less, that's considered immunocompromised. Now, if I'm living with HIV and my T cells, my CD4 is like 600, 800, 1,000, I am not considered immunocompromised. And that's by the FDA when I'm considering the COVID vaccine. If you have any questions about that, don't put patient information in there. Just hit me up, Facebook, IG, Dr. Maya 100, because I really want. I serve typical, like a lot of people I serve are living with HIV, and I got those calls. Dr. Hampton, you're so right. I got those calls, and I was able to say, if you're living with HIV, you get in early. They got the diagnosis early. They got in treatment as soon as possible. Now we can prescribe medicines to fight off HIV the same day you get diagnosed, and that's led to so many people being able to maintain that CD4, that army, that T cell way above 200. And so they're not immunocompromised. They still got their soldiers that can fight off infection. Again, HIV is human immunodeficiency virus. And the objective of HIV, as it reproduces in your body, it kills off your immune cells. So that means if I'm not on medicine, my immune cells, my army can be 1,200 today. Then over time, next month is 1,000. Then next month, because HIV is using my immune system cells to reproduce itself, and it's hijacking them and making my immune system dysfunctional. When that number gets down to 200, that's when I'm considered immunocompromised. And then I'll just include some other stuff. If you had recent treatment for a solid tumor, or you have blood, like a cancer of the blood, that's immunocompromised. If you got a solid organ like a kidney transplant or some stem cell transplants recently, you're considered immunocompromised. If you were born, and I was born with less than 200 soldiers, I was born like that. Genetically, my body doesn't make my immune system soldiers. That's considered immunocompromised. If you are living with HIV and you're not on medications, that's considered immune to fight off the HIV or suppress the viral load. That's considered immunocompromised because, again, HIV will eat away at your cells. But now we have a lot of medicines, and I remember the Dallas Buyers Club. The medicines are so much better now. A lot of times, the healthcare industry, we've updated the technology for the medicines. We did not update as healthcare providers our discussion in community about what HIV is, but we've updated the medicine. So I'll just take this time to note that there are a lot of medicines that generally can suppress the viral load very quickly, and people living with HIV on medications live long, healthy lives. They have children. They go on to be, live their dreams. Like, look at Magic. When they were living with HIV, they was playing world class gladiator basketball. So, that's just an example. And then if you have a chronic disease that eats away at your immune system, like HIV or any other disease, you're considered immunocompromised. If you have questions, you can check the Center for Disease Control, the CDC guidelines about what immunocompromised is meaning, and FDA, Federal Drug Administration. I'm drawing a blank right now, but their website, they'll tell you who is considered immunocompromised. So I just want to that, and that's going to be Nikki. I'm going to have to hop off. That's going to be my last thought for today.
Yeah, I know. But before you go, let me read
Mhm.
the follow up comment behind that.
Oh,
He said, "Thank you, Congressman Davis, for making sure that people such as I, who have immune problems, who are immunocompromised, are first on the list to get the shot. That's looking out for us individually. And I also thank you, Congressman Davis, for having this great panel of doctors who could break it down as if I was a fifth grader to make sure that I understood that me having a pre existing condition that makes my immune system unstable sometimes puts me ahead of the class with this corona vaccine to make sure that I could stay alive." I think that was great. So he and then
no.
he put a bunch of hands here. So he said, "Thank you, Dr. Maya, for that." So to all those people out there wondering, you first in line. If you got an immune system issue, that was the whole purpose of 1A and 1B.
Mhm.
It was to make sure that we focus on those people first.
Mhm.
So he
Oh,
says thank you. Oh,
oh,
go ahead,
thank
Maya.
you. One more going. If I don't have a spleen for whatever reason, got removed, I had a disease, that's considered, check with your doctor. You need another dose. Okay.
All
Thank you all
right.
so much.
We'll see
Thank
you next
you,
Monday. You know you
Congressman.
got your
Thank
meeting.
you,
See you
esteemed
next
doctors,
Monday.
and thank you, Nikki.
See
Bye.
you later. All right. Nicole Tony says hello. And Dorothy. Oh, Dorothy is here. She says good evening. Henrietta Holmes says good evening. And I am watching with you. She is here. Tanika Thomas is here saying good evening. Bonnie, Sister Bonnie says I'm wearing my mask at all times. Audrey Jaycock says good evening. I'm late, but I'm still here to listen. Linda Johnson says, can you get a positive test for COVID one day and a negative in the next couple days?
So unfortunately, that happens because the tests themselves are not perfect and the labs that run them are not perfect. And if you work in a lab, one of your responsibilities every day is to test everything to make sure the machines are running right, the chemicals are running right, and you're getting the right results. And there are also other things that will either make the test turn positively when it isn't positive, called a false positive, or negative when it's not really negative. And it could be other infections or other medications. So it's really helpful to have a second test confirm that first test so you know that it isn't really a false test, but a true test.
All right. Yep. Our next question says, why do we get fatty tumors that are benign and where do they come from?
Well, one of the things that we think about, usually we call those lipomas. And so whenever you get a collection of fat that forms under the skin and it's kind of soft and, round and you can kind of move it real easy, it's not fixed to the underlying tissues, you're probably dealing with a lipoma. But be cautious because if you see something and you're noticing that it's changing, we always say in medicine, if it's changing, we need to be aware of that. And in my experience, and that's another thing we covered in obesity medicine, believe it or not. They talked about you can have a genetic predisposition. So if you have people in your family who have God knows, that puts you at higher risk for it. But always remember, you have to your genes load the gun, and your habits and lifestyle pull the trigger, right? So even if you have a genetic predisposition to something, you have to still pull the trigger, which is so a lot of times it's the other things that you can do to prevent that. Women, I tend to see it in women. I see if you've had trauma or a part of your body that's bumped a lot, it'll inflame it and cause problems. And we a lot of times, if we really feel good about what we think it is, we don't have to biopsy and MRI it and CT it. It's a very common thing. But I do encourage people who have it. It's still a weight loss thing. So and don't get me wrong, you may lose weight and that lipoma stays where it's at. So if it causes problems, you have to remove it. But the key risk factor, I think, is people. I tend to see it more in my heavier patients. So I think that the biggest risk factor is obesity. That should be fairly obvious, but I tend to see it in those patients. But it's not a serious thing. But if it's changing, you should take it seriously.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah. The only
Yes,
other thing I would add about lipomas, even though they are benign and usually don't cause any problems, sometimes just where they're located can cause some either pain, discomfort, or if they're like with a woman, if they're near her bra strap, that can cause some issue, or even just if they're around the waist and the area where your belt is, that it can sometimes cause some discomfort. And in those situations where it is, even though it may be benign, may not be growing, but it's causing you to have enough discomfort, when you are wearing your normal garments, that may be an indication for removal also.
Okay. All right. Mary Ballinger says, good info and thank you so much, Dr. Graham. We have an anonymous question that says, this question is for the congressman. I read the CDC information that stated all unvaccinated people should be masked up. How do I deal with other employees who don't wear a mask when the federal government says that they should be masked up if they aren't vaccinated?
Well, I think those employees that the federal government has jurisdiction over in terms of where they work and who they work for, which is the federal government, they can demand as a policy that individuals wear masks or be tested or be vaccinated and have proof of it. Taking that level of directness for the federal government in our country is quite challenging. And it's quite challenging because just as our government made a decision to pull the troops out of Afghanistan, understanding some of what might happen. I mean, it's not like there was no understanding that sometimes there is not the gain without some pain. And so the federal government would much rather be able to convince people as opposed to having to force them. I'm saying we just don't like a heavy handed government in our country. And there are many people who feel that the government is already too invasive. That is, the government is directing people's lives too much. And I think the position of almost anybody that would be in a position to make such a determination would take all of that into consideration, no matter what they ultimately decided.
Um, she actually replied back, thank you, Congressman. I work for the local municipality. I'm wondering if I write the alderman a letter or maybe the mayor, and if so, can I carbon copy your office along with the CDC information? This
I think,
is unto death, and I just don't think we should play with other people's lives.
and I think that the person is absolutely correct, and I would recommend that you express your position to all of those levels of decision making, including myself, so that as people debate and discuss, I actually had lunch with the mayor on Friday, and we talked about this issue. There were six of us who are members of Congress, and we had lunch, and we discussed almost everything that one could think of during the time that we were together. Didn't mean that we came to conclusions, but we did, in fact, have the discussion and people were able to express themselves. And that's kind of the way we try and make decisions in a civil society where everybody have input and a right to their opinion, even though their opinions may sometimes be wrong. They still have a right to it. So I agree with your process 100%.
Okay. Our next question says, I've changed my diet, exercise, and I live a healthy life. No smoking of anything, raw vegan. I've lost over 150 pounds. I am currently 121 pounds. I've maintained this for almost 7 years, and I'm still on blood pressure meds. What can I do?
Man, where's Dr. Mason?
I know, right?
But
He'll be back next Monday, but
that's right. And to be honest, low carb, low fat, they both can work. But we sometimes have to dive a little deeper. And so, when I came up with this protecting your nest that's behind me, it's really just reminding people that there are other factors that you need to think about. So I would want to know, are we getting enough sleep? All the studies show if you don't get enough sleep, your pressure will be higher the next day. So we got to make sure. Of course, stress is pretty obvious, and all of those other factors, nutrition. And I think the nutrition part she has down. We want to make sure. I mean, I'm sure she's taking a B12, but I don't think that's when you're vegan or vegetarian, you should take a B12. You don't get that from plants as much as the bacteria that animals have. So I would ask about those things. I would ask her, did she bring her blood pressure cuff to the clinic to make sure that the number that she's getting at home matches what she's getting at the clinic because of the white coat effect. I would ask her about her alcohol consumption, although a little Chardonnay ain't gonna hurt. For some people, alcohol will cause problems. I triggered you again, Nikki. Then I would ask her about.
Because my mind is, I don't even like Chardonnay. I don't like Chardonnay.
All right, cool. That'll work. I would ask her, has she started exercising? Those blood vessels need to be expanded. I would ask her about things that we don't think about, like ibuprofen, those non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, like ibuprofen and Aleve. They can raise your blood pressure. Birth control pills can raise your blood pressure. Certain drugs, I would ask her doctor if she's taking other medicines. Are there medicines that I'm taking that can actually increase my blood pressure, like steroids and antidepressants? And then so what I would do is ask the doctor or advanced practice clinician, let's dive a little deeper. When I learned about like resistant hypertension, they always told us, make sure they don't have renal artery stenosis. In other words, the vessels that go to the kidney, are they blocked up? Do they have an adrenal tumor? Do they have Cushing? So what I'm saying is, you have to, when you have paid people, this is when you have to be a doctor, right? Like, it's so easy to just have somebody walk in the door and you say, do this diet or, take this medicine, and then most people will be fine. When I speak at Low Carb USA on the 20th.
Oh, Dr. Hampton, I got something for you.
Oh, no, not. Oh, I'm having palpitations. Oh my God, Doctor. I mentioned your name and you just came out of it's like you had to.
They showed up.
You showed up.
And next week. Look at him.
That is so funny. And we had a nice question that talked about a person who did adopt a vegan diet and had lost a ton of weight, did really well, but she's still on medicine, and she was a little frustrated about being on medicine still. And as you know, most of our patients who adopt these changes, they can get off medicine. But so I was just giving some feedback about all the things we can look for, like renal artery stenosis and things like that, adrenal tumors, all these different things that can, aldosterone can increase your blood pressure. Maybe there's something going on with that. So I think that what I was suggesting is that we do a deep dive with her clinician. And again, make the clinician earn their pay by saying, and to be honest with you, I bet you the Academy of Family Medicine and other institutions have algorithms for resistant hypertension. So if you just Google that, say resistant hypertension algorithm or treatment, and then you should be able to find the types of things that we think about. And then you may want to present that information to your clinician so that they can do some more. They may have done some of this stuff, but they should be able to look at your kidney function, look at these other things that can keep your pressure high when you've done all the right stuff, all the stuff that Dr. Mason would be happy that you did.
Well, Dr. Britt said that Dr. Mason was taking a comma and that he say you better take a comma. Otherwise, the big doctor upstairs will put a period. And so I learned something from Dr. Britt yesterday when he was giving Dr. Mason the credit for this grammatical interpretation of things.
Yeah, well, thank you, and I'm glad to be back. I just I did take a comma, and that came out because I said, "Let me take a comma before God gives me a period." So we all need to do that. We all need to do that because, and I'm not going to go into it that much, but it was really I had to take some time off. Actually, I need more, and most of us need to do more than we do. And I'm not saying it just because of what had happened to me, but I just know the nature of what we do and how we've been trained to ignore that in the idea that we're doing something better to help humanity by sacrificing self. But that's not healthy either. It's not healthy either. And so and I'm not going to get into that, but I'm just grateful that I had an opportunity to get away. A great place. Maybe one of these times we'll talk about these kinds of places that you can get away to. But I mean, just doing things that you hadn't done. I mean, I never thought about kayaking, but I was out kayaking. I was learning how to shoot a bow and arrow. I was doing meditation. I was doing qigong. I was doing all kind of stuff. So, but I'm just grateful that I had the opportunity and I had someone to help guide me in those choices. So I'm very grateful, Congressman Davis, and to see that everything just keeps going on as it should. But all of us, because as a physician, we become consumed with what we do as opposed to who we are. And even more importantly, whose we are.
All right, Bishop. All right. And all the great flow of good evening, Dr. Mason. Welcome back. Hello, Dr. Mason. Just the pouring of love that is here. Mary Ballinger says great suggestions and info, Dr. Hampton. She also, another person also says, thank you. I never thought of digging deep. I'm going to tell you, Dr. James Miller tell you. One day, Dr. Miller told me, we got to look at your blood pressure a different way. So one day I went on a diet. One day. I lost 215 pounds in one day. My blood pressure went down, didn't it, Dr. Miller? My blood pressure a one-day diet. I was good.
Yeah.
So we have to pay attention. Jackie Robinson Ivy says, doctors, do you expect we will still be dealing with the COVID uptick come fall along with the expected flu season?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I think that's very, very possible. And there are lots of factors in terms of people being together because it's cold, kids being back in school, and bringing things back home. There's lots of travel and holidays, Thanksgiving and Christmas. So until we get to 85% vaccinated with 2 vaccines and maybe 3, we're still going to be dealing with COVID.
All right.
Yeah.
Linda Johnson says, I've changed. I have changed since November, and I've had a good blood pressure report today and a couple weeks ago. So congratulations, Linda. Congratulations. I'm glad that Couch Conversations could be a help in that change. So thank you so much. Our next question says, can stress really kill you?
I didn't. What did she say? What did you say,
Can
Nikki?
stress really kill you?
And the answer to that is yes, in a couple of different ways. Part of that strep infection may start to affect the valves of the heart and the tendons, the ligaments of the heart, and that can be a very serious problem. And the other way that could be a problem is it starts to affect the kidneys as well. Not immediately, but long term. So these infections are something that should be diagnosed and treated from my perspective.
Let me just make sure I understand. Did you say strep or stress?
Stress.
Stress.
Stress. Yeah.
I thought I heard the word strep.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, stress.
Thanks for that.
Yes. Stress is a can cause huge problems that can kill you. So indirectly, your stress can kill you because it can exacerbate other conditions that you may have or cause other kinds of problems to occur. Or it can make your diabetes go out of control. It can make your blood pressure go out of control if you have congestive heart failure. It can be more difficult to control. So stress is a big factor in terms of exacerbating conditions that ultimately can kill you or can cause you to have injuries to your organ system. And so from that, so indirectly, stress kills you. Yes.
And
Great.
I'll
So you guys,
add.
go right ahead.
Well, I was
Go
just
right ahead.
saying that we talked. I mentioned earlier that one of the tests you can do for your blood pressure is to see if you have an adrenal tumor, and the adrenal has the cortex and the medulla. Stuff I've been learning in school lately, but some of the stress hormones, like I think the medulla is where those mineral corticoid, they're like epinephrine and norepinephrine. Those are like our fight and flight hormones. So imagine if you're under stress and your adrenals are constantly releasing epinephrine, norepinephrine. Guess what that does? It increases your blood pressure. Guess what that does? It increases your heart rate. Guess what that does? Increase how fast you breathe. And if you do that chronically, that's going to make you sick. And then there's the other hormone that comes from the body called cortisol. And we think about that as a stress hormone. Well, if your adrenal is constantly pointing that out, guess what that's going to do? It's going to raise your blood sugar. And you're going to be chronically at risk for diabetes now. So having stress in your life has a horrible impact on your body. We're designed to be stressed. So when I'm running from the lion, I should feel cortisol and epinephrine because I need to run and get my heart rate up. But I shouldn't be doing that because my supervisor is not treating me right. Right. And so if I deal with a supervisor that's not treating me right every single day, they're going to kill me eventually. So I need to deal with that, either change my job or get a better supervisor. So that's kind of how I see it.
All right, so my retainer caused us to get a 2-for-1. Now we know that stress will kill you, and also stress will kill you. So no, but that was, don't laugh at my retainer. That was great to know because a lot of people may get a little strep throat or something and they don't think it's important and they start taking the medicine and then they stop when they feel better. I mean, Doug actually shared that this could affect your kidneys. So when the doctor says take all the medication till you're done, take all the medication till you're done. I mean, now we're getting bombarded with questions, and we love your questions. We try to get to all of them as we always do, and I see your questions in all the comment sections that are coming in. But guys, I hate to tell you this, it's our time. I know you hate to hear us say that, but we're going to grab these questions and the questions we have left that we grabbed from earlier today, and we're going to go try to hit as many of them as we can on next Monday. But as always, we want to remind you to do a few things. As Dr. Hampton shared earlier, these numbers are going up when it comes to COVID. Let's stay alive, people. Get vaccinated. You asked a ton of questions about how do we stop the variants? How do we stop the spread? We do it by getting vaccinated. That's how we do it. So, we want to remind you to get vaccinated, mask up, wash your hands, continue to social distance, and as always, we're going to go around and we're going to ask everybody to give their until next Monday comments, and we'll have our closing statement from our congressman as always. So, Dr. Terry Mason, your until next Monday.
Please, if you haven't been vaccinated yet, get out and get vaccinated. I heard something that was so outrageous the other day on television, where the anti-vaxxers are saying that they're using that movie, I Am Legend, and saying that the vaccine is going to cause people to become zombies. I mean, it's the most ridiculous, crazy thing I've ever heard of in my life, but it made national news. And so we just have to, and there will be people who will latch onto that and use it. So I'm making it very clear, and I'm sure all my colleagues and the congressman here would agree that that is absolute rubbish. And we have to make sure that we continue to stay vigilant and get people vaccinated. We're seeing hospitals, ICUs all over the country filling up again. And it's going to happen if we don't do what we're supposed to do. So get vaccinated, period.
Yes. Texas and Miami, as of this afternoon, their ICU beds are completely filled. They have none left. Texas and Miami. And Mississippi is just about at capacity as well. So get vaccinated. Linda Johnson, I see your comment. Thank you, hon. Thank you so much. Dr. Hampton, you're until next Monday.
I think I just want to say, in fact, I'm going to share an article I wrote about stress with the diet doctor in a moment. But stress will always be with us. And a lot of people say crazy things. They'll say, man, I just wish things were like they used to be. Make America great again. But if you go backwards, right? Would you really want to be in the 1930s? Would you really want to be in the 1940s or the 1950s or the 19s? Would you really want that? And the reality is things will always be crazy, but we're doing okay in spite of the craziness. So when you think about even what's going on in the news, right? I don't watch a lot of news, but if you overconsume what's going on right now with Afghanistan, for example, it'll stress you out. But you got to ask yourself, how much control do you really have? Now, my congressman, he's going to do some things around that subject. That's not your job. You can do some things to encourage him to move in your direction. But my point is, if you overconsume stressful things, your cortisol level will be high, your epinephrine level will be high, and all of a sudden you're sick, trying to control something you can't. So my message for today is control your controllables. Don't get caught up in stress, because if you don't change yourself, because the stress is not going anywhere, then you're never going to be able to manage stress. So let's do some things different, like Dr. Mason suggested. Let's learn how to de-stress, take a break, and then maybe do some meditation even when you're not on a vacation, so you can learn how to deal with a stressful time.
All right, thank you. Dr. Douglas Graham, you're until next Monday.
So what I would say is put everything in perspective. The side effects are absolutely small and minor compared to this disease. And understand that we have monitoring systems, not just in the United States, but in Europe as well. And so far, neither the Moderna, nor the Pfizer, nor the Johnson vaccines have been taken off the European markets and withheld. They still strongly believe that the benefits far outweigh the risks of the vaccine. So I'm going to be in line to get that third booster shot. I hope that you all will be in line as well.
All right. Dr. James Miller, you're until next Monday.
I think that in life, we have to learn how to manage the various things that are going to be coming across our consciousness, and to manage it in a way that it is that we can live with it. We often can't control a lot of things outside of outside of ourselves. However, we can learn how to adjust to them so that they don't cause us as much of a problem. You know, as Dr. Tony Hampton is talking to us about stress. It isn't the stress; it's how we respond to the stress that really creates the problem. And some of that we don't have control over, and some we do, because oftentimes, we have such a curiosity to want to know about things that are happening, especially bad things. Bad things stop the traffic. It causes people to make all kinds of adjustment. And we just ride right on by the pleasing thing. So we got to learn how to appreciate and to include more of the pleasing and pleasant things in our lives, and how to walk by some of those things that get us upset. If we know that certain things get us upset, then let us figure out how to detour from that. Not that you're going to ignore things that are coming your way that may create problems, but don't just run to it and get yourself immersed in something that's going to get you upset, because you can't control it anyway. And it's going to control part of you that creates all those, set off a whole chain of reactions in terms of your stress response system that will create more problems. Going to make your heart beat faster, going to make you have chest pain, is going to make you have anxiety, nervousness. And so let us learn how to deal with things in a way that it is less stressful to us if we adjust to that or we avoid certain things. That is my till next Monday.
I simply love those commas you shared that the congressman and Dr. Mason talked about. We got to add some commas in our life. So I love those commas that you shared. Congressman Davis, take us home.
I think it becomes a matter of perspective. I've had some interactions in the last couple of weeks that have been very challenging from a personal vantage point. But then I've run into so many great things until the good days have outweighed the bad days. I ran into a gentleman in this restaurant yesterday morning, and he had his 2 little children having breakfast with him. And they just looked so great. And so I asked him, I said, can I take your picture? And he said, take my picture? I said, yeah, you just look like a model father sitting here. And much of my work kind of focuses on children. And he says, yeah. He said, but can I buy your breakfast? I said, well, I didn't order nothing but some grits and toast. I said, this was the day I should have had that steak and egg. But I felt so great. And then as I was leaving the restaurant, a fella looked at me and he said, are you Danny Davis? I said, yes, I am. He said, well, my daddy told me you helped him one time. So he died a few months ago. But I always wanted to meet you because my daddy said that you helped him do something. And that if I got a chance, let me tell you, by the time I got to my car, I was glad. Yeah. I was so high, I didn't know what to do. And that's kind of the way life can be. Yeah, we've got challenges. We got a lot of them. And sometimes you have to make tough decisions. But if you got something to hold on to and something to help you, I told a little group of young people the other day that sometimes I get to feeling down and think that I've lost all my friends and stuff. And I'm driving along in my car, and the words of one of the songs may come to me and say, what a friend I have in Jesus. All of my sins and griefs to bear. Oh, what a privilege it is to carry everything to God in prayer. Oh, what peace we often forfeit, what needless pain we bear, all because we do not carry. Now, say God. You may have something else. It may be Jack Daniels that you put your faith in. Yeah, it could be gin and tonic, whatever it is. It could be that. But if you don't have something that you can make use of, chances are you're going to end up, on that floor of the hospital where you don't want to be, in the psych ward or someplace. So if you don't take anything else away from this discussion, I would suggest strongly that you take that notion and whatever it is that you can find it and be very sure that your anchor holds and grips the solid rock. And as Spencer Lee sings almost every Sunday on his Time Truth Speaks, that rock better be Jesus or something. So I always enjoy these discussions. They are so informative. They are so beneficial. They are so helpful. And as long as we keep having faith, our health policy guys in the hospital right now, Dr. Caleb Gilchrist, Caleb had surgery and there were some complications, and he has had to have 6 pints of blood. But he's in the best hospital, some folks say, in the country, John Hopkins. So I think he's going to be all right. So I'm just dedicating this end of until next week for me. Until next week, I'm going to be praying that Dr. Caleb Gilchrist, my health policy guy, comes out okay, and that the folks at Hopkins can give him exactly what he needs. And I believe that they will. So thank you all so much. Have a great evening. Thank you, Nicole. And I look forward to seeing you next week. And don't forget, all of the viewers out there, we've got our 40th annual back to school picnic and parade on Saturday this week. All about the children. If the children are doing well, then the society is in good hands.
Good night, everybody. Same bat time, same bat station. Next Monday.
Thank you very much.